So the Dancing Hare is back in New Zealand. In fact, I don't think it actually left. The turned up in New Zealand around about January. I wrote that story in January, um, and follow that. Put that in context. Was the story was picked up in the mainstream media that the boat was here. That boat had a link to Epstein's partner, Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. I think I'm sure I pronounced that correctly. Her father owned it. I wrote a story basically saying, well, this it's quite interesting because when you take that boat, which is now called the Dancing Hare, I think it was called the Lady, actually called the Lady Ghislaine, went back in Maxwell's father owned it. And I said, when you look at the story, here's the boat. It's been in Brisbane, it's been in Pacific Islands, and I've traced it back to Monaco, and it's round about um, July that the boat was basically there, and the confirmation of that is that the management crew on the boat, which are a Brisbane-based company, were also at that particular boat show in Monaco, and I've got photos of that on my page. And then I did follow-up stories on that, looking at which other boats were harboured near there, such as Michael's the Beast, and I go into some, his what was happening with Michael at the time, and there was Lachlan Murdoch, who's related to Rupert Murdoch, and his boat was there. And there were a couple of boats I actually missed. One I think was the Sense, which I can't recall whether it was there or not. That's the boat that's owned by Google. Larry Page, and so we had the boat that was Larry Page's there, and then there was also the Rocinante, which again I managed to get mainstream papers that later confirmed that, so it wasn't a case of like, I went, oh, now I'm saying it's there because I can actually backtrack on these. Like, was there? I just failed to pick up on the Rocinante, and I linked that to Jeff Bezos, and of course my other stories turned around and looked at the flights that were coming to New Zealand that were linked to Amazon and to Saudis tied up with the Vision 2030, which is the biotech weapons program, and again Larry Page looked at his links to the New Zealand government drone air taxi proposal, which is being worked on at the moment, as all of this 5G and AI picks up. So this new story that's come out, which is funnily enough, because Dancing Hare does have esoterical connections, and yesterday was 22nd, was one of the equinoxes. I think it was autumn equinox, not my world, so have a look at that one up yourself. But that story broke on that particular time, and now she's saying, oh, we found all this stuff in the dumpster, and there was children's clothing, and there was these papers, and this is the boat where Ghislaine Maxwell was last seen on. Well, and that's why I go screech, because I go, wait a minute, I wrote that story. That's not actually what I said. And so that's the core point. And go, well, why are you making shit up? I mean, it's one thing to report on this because this is a significant news story, but when you actually make stuff up and then you get caught, it obviously undermines everything else and everyone else who writes about the story, which, kind of almost answers my own question there. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but that was obviously an area which should be addressed if the author is operating with integrity. There's also things like they're saying, like, oh, yes, Interpol's there. Well, there's nothing to back that actually up. And then they turn around and say, oh, the marshals are there. And they don't explain who the marshals are, but I've done stories on them before, and I've dug into that and discovered they're a group called the United Nation, not United Nations. And they've tied up with people like the headhunters, and there's been stories about their involvement in their period at Waitangi and storming officers and no one getting arrested, which is another story which I'm now working on relating to some of these groups that are popping up in New Zealand that have some pretty shady backgrounds and seem to be there to stir the pot. And so that's the story out there now, but I'm going, well, wait a minute, let's break this down. What are we actually seeing? So we've got, just like when the boat turned up in Dunedin, I went out there in video camera and took whatever additional information. I've done that, all very impressive. It shows it looks like you've been an investigator reporter. But then they went into the dumpster and they showed pictures of stuff that they come out, which is pictures of boats and the paperwork and children's clothing, and of course immediately 2 and 2 equals fucking 7. Going, well, we don't know how the children's clothing got in, but this is actually an open dump, so there's lots of other boats around, so we don't even know it came from that boat. So what looks like investigative reporting and showing evidence is not actually just showing children's clothing, which bomb. I find it a bit funny that there is documents, boats and paperwork stuff, and especially, they don't show you that it belonged to, again, that boat, but let's give the benefit of doubt. So, oh, yes, the insinuation is correct. Well, these boats are owned by billionaires. They're very security conscious people. They've got shredders on board these boats. They've got people actually trained and making sure that what they do because they're used to paparazzi going through the ship. So, you know, to me, that's the case of it seems to be good to be true when you actually try to show the chain of evidence, which links that evidence back to the boat. There's nothing actually there to show that that's anything more than crap in the rubbish bin. They also show people coming out the boat, and there's, I don't know, I'll only report on what I see, which is they talk about people coming up in hazmat suits, which is correct. There are people coming out there in white, what look like forensic suits and so on, and this gets an interesting issue because the real story, which has sort of also been missed here, is that number one, I know that people coming into the country probably have got, especially these boats, will have quarantine measures put in place and protocols. And maybe this is part of the protocols. I don't know. If anyone out there in boating goes, well, you know, would that be expected to be if you had for a billionaire to be even your staff wearing the white suits? I mean, is it that sort of paranoia that we're dealing with that kind of area, or is there something else going on? Is that boat actually? Is there somebody on board that boat with the coronavirus, and there is an issue going on? And to actually, instead of, to hide that factor, all this other shit's fucking popped up without looking at, well, wait a minute, why are these people wandering around in fucking white suits? And is it anything to do with the coronavirus? Have we got another fucking little outbreak going on there, and that's just all a big fucking storm and dance to get away from that? But even if you can't prove that point specifically, because you've got to say, well, we don't go again, the context of those white suits, which is what I was trying to allude to beforehand. We do have the situation of going, well, we've got people, these boats turning up, who turned up during lockdown. Like, where is the paperwork for their having been in quarantine? And there's actually there is an issue going on here, because I guess what I'm really trying to draw the bullseye on is that a lot of these boats are coming here for the America's Cup, which will happen in December, and we still go for this coronavirus crisis. So no one's actually discussed, well, wait a minute, is the America's Cup still actually on, or is like, and if so, how come we've got an event for billionaires, but all these other fucking tourism operations are screwed up? I mean, there are some genuine newsworthy stories here, but when you dress it up in a whole bunch of Satan and babies and look, there's shit in the rubbish bin, without any chain of evidence and not actually working for the measure, and then you're actually misquoting people, making claims that you don't provide source material from. It's all bullshit, and it actually, hurts people like me trying to actually fucking show you guys that there's some fucking shit going on. In saying that, I find I'll end with is that the fact that boat, I mean, there's Google right next to it, there's Rocinante, which, as I go into my stories, appear to have links to Amazon. There's Census, which is linked to Larry Page. And then there's all these other people here which are talking about basically bringing in New Zealand a time when we look at buying into big data, and AI, and 5G, and and billionaires are talking about coming to New Zealand to beat their bolt oil, and there's these big deals going on about their drone air taxi service. I mean, huge fucking money. Google building this fucking big data centre in Wellington. This is some shit's going on, and this is reporting on real economics and business news and stuff that affects us all, and affects the kind of infrastructure we're having. We're not having a conversation. We're talking about Satanists and babies instead, and to me that actually hurts the real story at the heart. And I kind of have to ask myself, how much of that is just intentional, how much is just somebody's got excited and they've jumped on the story, and unfortunately they've created a sour shit which actually distracts away from what's really at the core of the story. Not to say those other issues aren't. Human trafficking is very much an issue. New Zealand does have links to those situations. Epstein, all those guys actually all connected. Epstein, which again, which like, why only talk about Epstein? That's the one that you can't prove. You've got Bezos over here, you've got Larry Page here, who actually do link to Epstein directly, are actually here, or have got assets that are here. You're talking about something which you can't actually prove. So it's deliberately sort of leaving the carrot over here and avoiding the stuff with the real fucking meat on the bone. And I'll leave you with that. Ben Vidgen, obviously report investigating for Deadline Gazette. Do check out our bi-monthly newsline. And I'll leave you with that. Good night.